Hi, I'm here with Andrew Hawkins, AIA. He's the president and principal architect of Hawkins Architecture in College Station, Texas. His firm focuses on education and civic projects across the state. Andrew operates his practice with an atmosphere of collaboration and learning, believing that both are equally important to a successful firm. He has written articles for AIA National, Texas Architect Magazine, and various architectural websites. He is active in the AIA at all levels. Andrew believes in sustainable design, technology, and practice, and the power of thoughtful architecture. And he is also the guest host of a podcast, Life of an Architect.
That's true. I forgot. That's a little bit older of a bio there. Before I started hosting him 4 months ago, I guess.
Yeah.
3 or 4 months ago. So yeah, that's added to my list of stuff there too now. Apparently.
Yes. Okay, Andrew. Thank you for agreeing to do the interview with me. And here are the questions. What are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
Yeah, I've been trying to think about that for the past, 2 days since you sent me that list of questions. I think it really depends on your definition of architecture and what that really means, because I remember architecture, as my house and my school and those kind of things, which are maybe not great examples of architecture, but experiencing architecture nonetheless.
I just say whatever way you interpret the question.
Yeah, I think really part of it for me was probably, the idea of my elementary school when I was a kid, because it was a more of a school that you don't build that much anymore now, where there's sort of everything opens to the exterior and there's courtyards and those kind of things. And so there was a lot of interaction between the indoors and the outdoors, even beyond just, being a kid going to recess. But if I had to go to another classroom, I would go outside and there would be, surround this courtyard and walk to the different places and those kind of things. And so that really, I think, gave me an experience, probably my earliest experiences of architecture, even though I didn't really think about it that way at the time. But looking back on it, I think that's probably the first sort of idea for that I can think of as a concept. I mean, granted, I played with Legos and I built a lot of stuff on my own, so I created my own experiences of architecture as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's kind of the way that California schools are, where you have these open courtyards and maybe separate buildings, and the kids are walking from building to building. Where, I grew up in Pittsburgh, so our schools were all very, it's like,
you didn't have that luxury because half the year it was really cold. Yeah. I mean, I think that is sort of a warmer climate idea about being able to go outside and walk to a different building and walk to a different classroom and those kind of things. Like the majority of the circulation that I remember was exterior,
Yeah.
Even if it was to the lunch or the gym or whatever, it was, the spaces were connected, but the pathways between them and the circulation spaces were all sort of mostly exterior, so that you could be outside, whether that was good or bad. I mean, it was hot or it was raining, but it was never really that cold, so it worked out okay.
Yeah, our high school.
And we had windows in our classroom and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But there for a while they kind of decided that was a bad idea. So.
Oh yeah,
I grew up at least in a place that had windows.
Yeah, no, I think that, our high school was, it was kind of modern, and I think in cutting edge in the time. I mean, it was like in 1969, but we had these courtyards, but nobody ever went out with it. You weren't allowed to go out with them. And then they had those blinds that were in between the windows, that would break immediately, right? So it's like ours really the only there was just a little prison window in the door that you could see out, and then maybe, if the blinds were still working in the windows, you could see into the courtyard, but nobody was allowed to ever go into those courtyards. They could bring in light, and that was it.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. I think somewhere along the way, everybody decided that daylight and exterior views were bad for education or something. So. And at least we're moving away from that now, I think. But, for a while, that was kind of the main idea. So.
Keep them focused. Keep them focused with no light.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was even before there was any computers, where you didn't even need that stuff. But kind of a strange thing.
Yeah. I know one of my kids' teachers was saying he didn't want to answer anybody's questions. This was in high school, and like several years back, and he was total Mr. Computer Tech, but he was like, well, you know, the classroom of the future, like they're not even going to go to class, right? They're just going to do everything online. And I said, well, problem is that I do send my kids to school, and you are the teacher in the front of the classroom, so I'd appreciate if you like, you know, at least play the role for a little bit before everything does go online.
Yeah.
You're thinking too far ahead.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so what are 3 classic buildings that you like and why?
And this one killed me, as a matter of fact. Because at first I struggled with what does classic mean. I really didn't know what you meant by that.
And everybody says that. Yeah, everybody says that. It's whatever you think is classic. Yeah.
Well, and so I was like, well, so if it has to be classic, does that mean the architect has to be dead? So then I've got to start looking, you know, back to find stuff where, you know, somebody's no longer alive. I mean, I think the issue for me is that I'm kind of a modernist at heart. So the early 20th century is really kind of my bread and butter for buildings, I would say. And then it was hard to, again, pick out specific buildings, of course. I could pick out architects, which I think may be an easier task to say, well, here's the 3 architects whose work I like. But if I had to, I was looking at, you know, that time period, and like Richard Neutra, I like a lot of his work.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, to me, the people whose work I seem to like the most throughout, I guess, modern architecture history is all sort of residential type work, even though I don't do any residential work in my office. But I think it's the forms and just the application of it, and maybe that's their houses because it was easier to pull off at that with those sort of ideas and concepts of pure modernism. But so the Richard Nordstrom, the Kaufman House in Palm Springs, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a classic in my book. And I like a lot of his work because of the lines and the modernism, which again, I tend to lean that direction a lot in my design, even though some of the ideals behind it I don't agree with, but the aesthetic I really like, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that one, again, most of these are also, which I can kind of tie back to maybe what we were talking about earlier, is these examples that I have, there's a lot of inside out, you know, the exterior and the interior kind of blend together. And there's a lot of that back and forth. And that's usually, I find, the kind of architecture that I'm drawn to, is where the lines between inside and outside can get blurred,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, a lot of interaction between the two. So that one in Palm Springs. And then another one would be Pierre Koenig's Case Study House 22 in LA. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's sort of a really iconic, very iconic modern house.
With
design
the Julius Shulman image, right? Of the
right. I mean, exactly. It's to me, just one of the most iconic, kind of glamorous things about modernism at the time. I mean, it's still great today, but you know, it's endured for quite some time as being really, really iconic.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, it would be John Lautner. He's another architect where I really like a lot of his work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, but
kind
of went a different direction in a way. I mean, in his work, he still has elements of Wright, but he kind of took it in his own direction. And there's the Arango residence in Acapulco. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's got this big sweeping sort of concrete roof system.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's this inside out aspect to it that I really enjoy, but it's a little bit more modern in its construction, its form, but it still has some sort of Wrightian influence in the way it's laid out and those kind of things. But it's a really modernist kind of idea. Granted, I have this whole list of all these other projects, of course, people that I like and work that I'm interested in.
Like West Coast. Have you been on the West Coast? Like John Lautner, one of my friends from school, like actually worked for John Lautner for a while.
Yeah, and And I know a guy that worked for him for a little while, which
Yeah.
impresses me. But yeah, no, I mean, I went to school in the Northwest. I got my master's degree at the University of Oregon, so
Oh,
I spent
okay.
some time kind of on the West Coast, but
Yeah.
not a lot of time in that area down, Palm Springs, LA and stuff. But
Hmm.
I think that's the reason I like that is because that's a lot where the inside out kind of open air architecture stuff originated and was done, before there was air conditioning and all
Yeah.
those kind of things. So that's,
Yeah.
that's what it kind of appeals to me in that way. I mean, like I say, I was looking at other stuff and, you know, if I want to throw out some other ones, I like, East Coast or Midwest stuff in
Hmm.
Chicago, like Mises ITT Crown Hall. That's a great building.
Hmm.
And it's one of those, I mean, it's one I didn't really think about as being really fantastic until you go and visit it and you can experience it and realize that as simple as it is in a way, it's a really great space.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then here in my neck of the woods, the Kimball Art Museum by Lucan in
Hmm.
Fort Worth is another kind of great
Yeah.
space. So I already got 5 in, so I feel like I'm ahead of the game. But it was, the funny thing was when I sat down to do this, I had to
I
to look through these things and go.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
We don't have air conditioning. I mean, we don't really need air conditioning for that. So that's the reason why a lot of those places, I mean, they're close to you're close to the water. And I mean, I'm like 10 miles inland and we don't have air conditioning. We don't really need air conditioning, but we just open up the doors and windows and that's fine because the climate's like that. So it's kind of that indoor, outdoor, of course, now you're supposed to put air conditioning in everything, but I mean, kind of,
Yeah, that's true, and it's funny. To me, it sounds strange in some of those areas to build a new building and it doesn't have air conditioning, but I mean, it's totally viable. When I was in Oregon in the late '90s, I lived in a brand new house that had no air conditioning, and it just really kind of blew my mind. Right, coming from Texas, and I was like, man, what do you mean there's no air conditioning? I'm gonna die. And it wasn't that bad. Except for the first summer I was there, it was like the hottest on record, and it was over 100 degrees in Oregon, and there was no air conditioning, and so you spent most of your time like in the mall or at the movies or something
Yeah.
where there was air conditioning and you could just hang out because it was pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess looking through this is being drawn to that sort of inside out kind of idea,
Hmm.
which I think is really, even some of the more modern current architects, I prefer ones that do have this interaction with nature and the site that's around them and those kind of things.
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
So
So what do you like about being an architect?
I like making stuff up. I know that sounds weird, right? But like, I like to make things up. I like to create stuff out of my head most of the time. I just think it's fun. Also, I really like to get into the details of things. Like, to
Hmm.
me, putting a building together is probably more fun than designing a building. Like, I would almost rather, even though I don't get the opportunity very often, but take someone else's ideas and actually make it so that it can be built. So I like to get into those nuts and bolts kind of thing and figure out exactly how it would be put together and pieced together. That's probably my favorite part of the job, even though may not get to do it as much as I used to because I spend most of my time trying to run the business. But
Yeah.
that's really my favorite part, is
Yeah.
getting into the nuts and the bolts of stuff and figuring out how to actually build something that you've dreamed up and not
Hmm.
just have it be on paper and here's some squiggly Frank Gehry lines or whatever, but being the person who would have to take that and make it into something. And that's what I like most about the job. I mean, there's a whole wide array of tasks and jobs and parts of jobs that you have to do as an architect, but that one there would be my favorite. If I could do that all day, I would do that all day and just figure out how to put things together.
Yeah.
But I don't have that luxury.
I primarily do, custom residential, and then, I'd like to do more multifamily, but, at least I like how you can design something and then you're literally like, the process is only 2 years long. I mean, for me, it's like, I'm designing something, I'm getting the building permit, we're building it, and I'm involved in like the whole process and, working out. And most of the time, what I've envisioned, really becomes, it becomes built. So, I guess there's a lot of architects that don't see that from start to finish to kind of like work out those things. So it's like they have an idea and then, right, they give it to somebody else to do, and they don't really, see the connection, from the beginning to the end, where we're kind of, if we're in residential, or if you're involved in like the whole project, like you are with your practice, right? If you have your own practice, you're pretty much involved with everything in the practice, unless it's like
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think if you get into those bigger companies, there are people that sort of dream up some concept and then just pass it off, and then dream up the next concept and pass it off, and they kind of never right. They never even see what happens after that. That would drive me crazy, I think.
Absolutely. No, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that, and it's funny because I've always worked for small firms, so I've seen everything from like start to finish, and like products, right? Like seeing one product and then moving on. It's like you're gonna, you see one product and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna integrate that into my project, and then you kind of like see it through, through the whole process. Like if there's a different, like a metal cladding, that I put on one house, and then I'm seeing how that goes, that goes together. But, it's like, taking, that was the client's idea, that he wanted this metal part on the husband, at least. The wife wasn't that crazy about it. But it turned out, it turned out to be really nice. But, because, there's only metal on like one part of it, and then the rest is stucco, and then there's like this wood clad, the typical 3 material thing that's kind of trendy now, right?
Yeah.
But just seeing all those, knowing the materials, and then for some people, you're talking, some people are talking, it's like, oh, well, the material, it seems like they're not that much in connection with the material process, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's what I like about it, for sure, being a small firm, is that you still get to, I get to see all that, and I do get to be involved in that whole process. I can't imagine. I don't think I would get much satisfaction out of just kind of dreaming something up and passing it off and not getting to, see it to fruition, for sure.
Yeah.
So, but, being able to do that, I prefer to try to do all that figuring out ahead of time before it starts construction, but but sometimes, it doesn't happen that way, and things, of course, on a job site, things get changed or not installed the way they should have been in the first part, and then there's that, domino effect where you're trying to catch it up and fix it as it goes through. But I don't know that that's fun, but it's, it happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure that, maybe if I used Revit or something, that might have like shown up, like I was at the job site this morning, and maybe it's like, okay, those joists were only 6 inches, they're 5.5 inches deep, right? So it's like they can't fit the vet in, so now we're gonna have to put, which it's like my worst thing is like having to put a soffit in, and this is even in the kitchen, and it's just killing me. I'm like, oh my God, like that's the only way it's the only way we're going to be able to have that tub up above this space, to come in. And I'm like, oh God, and so the owner's rep like just thinks it's great. She loves this soffited look, but I'm just like, I don't know, I always think a soffit is like a Band-Aid solution for things.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then some people don't view it that way. They're like, "Oh, yeah, it's an element of style, or it's an aesthetic," and you're like, "No, it's a fix. It's not what it's supposed to be." Right?
It's a fix. And we have it all the way. Sure. It's able to go all the way around. It doesn't look to it, but it's like people will probably never know, but I'll know it's there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, what would you?
That's every project, right? You can see the bad spot. Nobody else even ever notices it, but you walk in and that's like the first thing that you see. You're like, oh, that spot. I know.
Damn tub. Yeah, that's it. What would you like to say about the future of architecture?
I don't know. It's scary. Well, because now I've been teaching for about 2 years at the college here. So I've been teaching in the Department of Architecture at Texas A&M for a couple of years now, and it's it's so different than when I was in school 25 years ago or whatever. And I was having a conversation just yesterday about that, sort of, it's interesting that the mentality of a student today is different than the mentality of a student when I was in school. When, in earlier, I guess, is that, we were always trying to figure out how to take parts and put parts together, like if we were making a model or doing something like that. And now, the kids sort of conceive everything as a whole piece because they're going to either 3D print it or they're going to laser cut it out. And there's no sort of, here's all the parts it takes to make that up. It's like, here's the thing that's done, right? It's complete. And I'm just going to press print and the 3D thing is going to print it, or the laser cutter is going to cut it out. And there's not a lot of thinking about all of the different components that go into making that whole piece. So it's an interesting dynamic that's on the forefront of my mind right now, I guess, because it just happened this week that I had this conversation. But I think that at some point, the future of architecture is going to be a lot about fabrication, I think, in a way, and hopefully not before I'm dead, but probably. Right, because then I have to figure out how to do all that stuff, and a person who likes the parts and pieces is a little bit different. Maybe a dinosaur in that world, but I do think that there's a strong, I think, future for architecture, mainly because I think that design as a whole is sort of, at least currently, in the past decade or so, become really more important to the general public, right? Because people really care about the way that their blender or their mixer looks, or what their refrigerator looks like. Whereas before, those kind of things weren't really evident. Nobody really cared what their blender looked like. But now they want a cool, modern looking blender, and I want it to have some aesthetic to it, kind of stuff. So I think that the idea of design is sort of permeating more into everyday life, and I think that's beneficial for architecture. Because at some point I think people will want to inhabit better spaces, right? And it's already sort of happening, but I think it's going to have to take sort of a generation that's younger to really push that through. Once those people can start to afford to actually do something.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school in Denmark from like 1986 to 87, and it seemed like everybody, in Denmark just had everybody had good design in their house, right? It was all Scandinavian design. I mean, there were some people that we would go, because we lived with Danish families, right? So it's like, I lived with a Danish family, and we were in this, this 1800s, brick apartment building, but the apartment had been redesigned by this architect before. So we had all Arne Jacobsen fixtures in like this, in this, right? In this like dumpy apartment, right? Because everybody had redone all of the different spaces, so it's like they were just so much more in touch with design. And there were some people that we would go to their house and it would be more like, like an old person lived there or whatever, more American as far as, you like go into a lot of people. I mean, I just see like people that are my age. I mean, I don't consider myself to be that old. And then I like see their house and it's like, gosh, this person looks, this house looks like somebody that like even my grandmother would have newer things in this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Where it's like dark, dark green walls and like super, thick drapes and like, a lot of, chintz or things like that. I mean, just things that I seem to associate with like an older person and not like with the, with kind of a younger person. But, tradition is kind of hard to break. But maybe like Scandinavian design, right? That was their tradition, is Scandinavian design. So it's a lot more modern. So that is kind of their bad. But, and then as far as the students, I mean, I go to crits and I think a lot of it is just, and I mean, maybe this was even when we went to school, but I think some people, they just don't design spatially. I mean, they're not like looking at a space and then saying, hey, this window over here is going to bring this light. I mean, and now maybe with the computer, like the computer can do a lot for them. So they're not actually experiencing it themselves, or say, oh, look at or they see something, right? The internet, right? When I went to school, I mean, there was no internet. There wasn't even an internet when I started working.
Yeah, no, I hear you, right? Like, and I agree with you. I think that what you're trying to get at is, right, it's like everything that they kind of, well, in a sense, their experience is very two-dimensional, right? Like, oh, I'm going to look up some building on, whatever, on the internet, and then that's how I learned about it. Where if we wanted to do that, what do we got to get in a car and we got to drive, 20 something hours to go see this building, because that was the only way you could really get a sense of it. I mean, you could maybe look at some pictures in a encyclopedia book or something, right? Yeah. But I mean, there wasn't the ability that they have now to like instantly figure that out. And so I do think that the life of everything is on a screen really has impacted their ability, like you say, to think about things spatially in a way. And I try to reinforce that. I don't, in my class, I don't let it, we never design and plan. I'm always forcing them to design in section. Because that's what I do, and that's space. Space is section, right? I mean, so I force that on them, and sometimes it whether this is their second year or their fourth year, it blows their mind. Like they have to start thinking about things from that direction instead of a planned layout of something. But I think that's part of it, and it seems to be that it is in my mind, somehow related to that sort of 2D world that they just completely inhabit all the time because it's just a screen.
And I mean, granted, there were people, I know that and it could just be like a different method of design, right? I mean, I knew people that, when they said, okay, design, say, a science museum or something, because I was kind of talking, they would say, okay, I'm going to look up every science museum. And there were some people that would actually go out and buy the book, or they'd go out and they would look at all these different science museums, and then they would pick like, okay, I like that one. And then their project would be exactly like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean,
you didn't want to try.
That's still sort of,
and it's like, no, they didn't. And then they had all the stuff done, and they had presentation drawings, and they had their model done, and of course, they completed the whole project, on time and everything, but they didn't explore any, new ideas, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's another thing I deal with kind of on a daily basis is that students these days are really. They really don't like to fail at stuff, right? And they don't understand that
that's
failure is part of learning, right? You got to do some stuff. You got to do a lot of stuff wrong before you can figure out how to do it right. But they just want to do it right the first time, and that's it. Like they don't want to have to do something. They don't want to do these. I messed up. I'm going to start over. I messed up. I'm going to start over. They want to be like, this one's perfect from the first time, and I'm going to go with it. And that's that's not how architecture works for sure, right? And if it does, then we're in trouble. But
and I think that a lot of the things, I mean, and I like tell people that because my kids have grown up like in public school, and I went to public school, but it was in Pittsburgh, and it was it was very different because they had so much arts, and they had arts, they had shop. You were doing you were doing more things with your hands, and it wasn't about whether or not you were right or wrong. Where they've taken the art, they've taken the arts out of the schools, right? So it's like when I was the art docent for these different classrooms, the kids would be like, I mean, even in elementary school, they would be, so like, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? Like even little kids, and it's like, oh my gosh, like just paint something, like just paint anything. I'm telling you, you can do whatever you want. And that's the kind of the same thing I tell, when I'm there for crits. And I said, you know what? I said, this is going to be the freest time of your life. Like this experience, like education is going to be the freest time because, you're going to go out, you're going to have to design somebody's addition, and it's going to have all these parameters. It's going to have to, you're going to have to listen to the code, budget. It's like, they want it to match their existing house. And I said, now you can do whatever you want. Like this is going to be the freest. So go ahead and do that. I mean, explore and like do whatever you want. Like use your creativity.
For sure, yeah. Because at some point there are rules. I mean, the way that I sometimes approach that is I tell them you've got to know all the rules in order to be able to break it.
Yeah.
So sometimes sometimes the boundaries are good because you got to be able to play within those. But at the same time, there's no. In my opinion, there's no right or wrong answer. You just do what you do, and I'm gonna I'm gonna guide you right in that process, but it's not my job to say that that's wrong or that's right. I mean, unless it's really
Yeah.
terrible, like,
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
you're trying to defy gravity or something, right? I mean, but like,
Or the spaces are off, right? They've like put like 1/8 inch
yeah,
scale, like, things in a 1/4 inch scale, plan. And then you're like, why is this off? There's something wrong about this, and then it's, oh,
yeah,
it's like, yeah, your bathroom's only 2 feet wide. It's,
yeah, exactly, yeah. That's a 1-foot door. I'm not sure how
yeah,
anybody's gonna get through there. Yeah,
I know. It's
yeah, I know.
very, very thin people, very little. Oh,
Yeah, well,
so, so we both, kind of wrapping it up, we both, I went to the KBIS and IBIS, and I was only there for, I was in Vegas for 24 hours, which I'm not crazy about Vegas, because I don't gamble and I don't drink. So it's like, I mean, it's like I'll have a drink or something. Maybe I'll have two. I think I had, I think I had two when I was there, but, that's over like 6 hours. But what did you think about the show, and what were your
actually,
best minutes of the show, I guess?
well, that was my first time to go. Actually, first time
Me
I've ever been.
too.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was kind of crazy to see, and the comparison that I kept making that was kind of amusing to me is that, we're going to be back in that exact same spot for AIA in June for the AIA National Convention,
Yeah.
and we're going to be like probably in 1/3 of the space that place was, right? There was the
Yeah.
North Hall, the Central Hall, the South Hall,
I had
and
no
we
idea
might be
where
in
I was. I had no idea where
well, and we might be in one of those things for AIA.
Yeah.
But this thing was so giant, and then they're building houses in the parking lot, and I mean, it's just completely overwhelming how much, how crazy it was.
Yeah.
And there was, I went. The other thing that was crazy to me is that you'd go into some of these places, and especially on the KBIS side, right? They would have every single model of appliance that they offered, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I think you were at the Kohler booth, but in any other place, it was like they had all, like, they had to have a 10,000 square foot showroom of their appliances, and you could
Oh yeah,
see
like Miele.
every single one. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
it was
Miele or
insane how there was,
Intel. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? Samsung had this giant thing, and they had all their goofy, computer refrigerators, but then now has all this other stuff, and it's
Yeah.
just wild that they like bring everything they have to this show, where to AA they kind of don't, or some of them don't even show up. But and then it's also nice on the IBS side is that the building products, they kind of try to put on a show too, in a sense that they've got product installations, and they've got all these assemblies of their whatever it is, their flashing or their whatever, and they've got all
Mhm.
these physical built pieces, so you can kind of see how it's supposed to work, and all these kind of things, which again never really happens at AIA, or if it does, it's on a much smaller scale. But I mean,
Yeah.
half
Yeah.
of the booth has got like full wall sections built in there, and you're like, whoa, I mean, and it's I thought it was great. I didn't get it because we had meetings and we were running around doing PR stuff. I didn't get to walk the floor as much as I'd hoped.
Mhm.
But even the bit that we did, it was still it was kind of mind blowing how much stuff there was there. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely kind of want to go back next year and spend a little more time on
Yeah.
the show floor. I walked over with a guy one day from the hotel when I was going to meet Bob, and this guy was like, "Yeah, I walked the whole floor yesterday." I was like, "I walked a total of like 8 miles," and I was like, "Oh my gosh," and I was like,
I
"But
know, I know. I mean, I had no idea that the other wings were even there. I mean, I was in the one part and like we walked around, and then I said, okay. And then like my friend went, and then I decided to go to other ones. But they had the car lifts, because out here everybody wants these car lifts, right? Well, they actually had the car lifts with the cars on them. You know,
yeah,
three
right? I mean,
three
insane."
car lifts with Corvettes on them. Like top and bottom. And all these cars. I mean,
Hmm.
like, so I took a photo. I'm like, okay, here's the thing. And then I stopped by the noon home and got the stickers and like some of the other stuff. The Kohler,
Yeah,
I was there. I went to the Kohler booth because my friends with Kohler, which like I guess they have a bunch of you know, I was impressed with a lot of it. They had this 3D printed faucet, and I think that that's like, I mean, that was amazing because it was so thin and the water was coming out of it. And it was just it was kind of like this idea of a faucet. It was like the Benjamin Franklin house, you know, that Venturi and Scott Brown did.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it was like that with, you know, with the knobs and the faucet. And I'll post it on this blog, but you know, I mean, and then you just turned it on and then the water just came out and I was like, wow, I didn't like, why do we have like these big clunky fixtures if we can get water out of these tiny little
Yeah, they still, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. It's nuts, yeah.
Yeah, and I like I did like some of the prefab houses. I mean, I know Boxable. I know Bob like wasn't creative, but anyway, I think with Boxable, I think they had everything right. They couldn't put the drywall. You know, they didn't have drywall seams, or because then they would have had to break all that stuff apart. But I was pretty amazed at what the cost was and what you could cut it, and that they could stack to 4 feet. Because that one little Stuga one, I mean, it was cute, but it was kind of interesting that Boxable, you can stack them 4. You know, they're kind of like the shipping containers, but you know, they're like not, you know, you don't.
Yeah, expandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing was really, really crazy. Granted, the one they had set up there didn't fare so well in the snow that came through. Like, it was pretty leaky the next day, and there was guys out there like putting tarps on top of it to try to keep it from leaking and stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, because it was sort of an incomplete installation, right? But it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was that whole thing was pretty nuts.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a whole different scale than, you know, definitely what I'm used to for any other convention for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm interested in going back. Granted, I think it's in Vegas for like the next 3 years or something. So maybe if I continue to go back by year 3, I'll know my way around, right? And I can find the stuff that I'm looking for, as opposed to how was this time going, wait, where am I? I'm North Hall, section 2 or 3rd floor. I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. I'm just going to follow somebody and hope they're going out, you know? It was kind of insane.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, Andrew, thank you very much for your time that you had for this interview, and hope to see you guys at AIA conference, right, in Vegas again.
Yeah, in Vegas again, sure. I mean, we'll be there. I mean, I'll be there. So I've already got my stuff all set up. So I don't know, I'm sure it'll be a lot easier to navigate, at least this time around. So.
Well, I always go to the convention hotel, so I can just like roll out of bed and go directly. And this time, maybe I can make a 7 a.m. session, because I always sign up for them. And with East Coast time, I can never get out.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I sign up for them and I just never make it anyway. 7 a.m. is just not part of my daily experience, really. Well, I might get up, but I'm being somewhere presentable, and you know, it's like, wait, what's wrong with these people? It's 7 a.m.
I think we should rally and change that. There should be
right. I know. And especially when they have like the keynotes at 8 a.m. in the morning and stuff. I'm like, this is terrible. What are you doing to me?
The keynotes in New York were at night.
Yeah, well, that was nice. Yeah. I missed New York, but that would have been better.
Yeah.
I would have preferred that. But see, that's right. I mean, they know how to do it in New York. I don't know what we're doing at this 7 a.m., 8 a.m. keynote stuff. But yeah, I'm with you. I try to stay as close as I can too, so that if I have to, it's the shortest distance between my room and the convention center where I've got to be, right? Whatever that is, however I can make that the smallest distance, because that gives me more time to sleep or do whatever. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I'm pretty sure. I'm definitely sure we'll run into you there for sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
All right. Okay. Hey, thanks so much.
Okay. Bye.